Some nights you lie awake, wondering how you became the person everyone leans on while you're quietly falling apart. You smile, you say, I'm fine, you carry everyone else's problems, because that's what good women do, right? But what happens when the weight becomes too much, when the people you trust most walk away when you need them most? This is Sarah's story, a woman who lost everything at 22 and discovered that sometimes rock bottom is exactly where you need to be to build something unbreakable. If you're watching this alone, feeling invisible, carrying burdens that aren't yours to carry, you're not alone. We see you. We've been you. Hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This community is built for women who refuse to stay broken.
The fluorescent lights of Miller's diner buzzed like angry wasps above Sarah's head as she wiped down table 12 for the third time that morning. 22 years old, and already her hands looked like her mother's had at 40. Cracked, red, bearing the weight of too many double shifts and not enough hope. Order up! Jimmy's voice cut through the breakfast rush noise. Sarah grabbed the plates, her worn sneakers squeaking against the greasy linoleum floor. Table 6. The businessman in the expensive suit who never looked her in the eye. Here you go, sir, she said, setting down his eggs and toast. He grunted without looking up from his phone. No, thank you. No acknowledgement that she existed at all. This was her life. Invisible, forgettable, a ghost serving coffee to people who had everything she'd never even dared to dream about. The bell above the door chimed and Marcus walked in, his hair still messy from sleep. Her boyfriend of 2 years, if you could call someone who showed up when he needed money a boyfriend. He slid into the corner booth, the one with the ripped vinyl seat that nobody else wanted. Hey, babe, he called out, that charming smile that used to make her heart race, now just making her tired. Can you grab me some coffee and maybe, if there's any extra food going to waste? Sarah's stomach twisted. There was never extra food going to waste. There was barely enough food, period. But Marcus had this way of making his problems sound like emergencies, his needs sound like love. She poured his coffee, her hands shaking slightly. The exhaustion was getting worse. 3 hours of sleep last night, 4 the night before. Her mother's medical bills kept growing, and her brother Danny's school expenses weren't going anywhere. At 19, Danny was smart enough for college, but too proud to admit they couldn't afford it. Sarah, honey, came a voice from behind the counter. Mrs. Patterson, the regular who always sat at the inn stool, was watching her with concerned eyes. You look like you haven't slept in days. I'm fine, Sarah lied, the words automatic now. She'd been saying them so long she almost believed them herself. But Mrs. Patterson wasn't buying it. Listen to me, sweetheart. I've been watching you for 2 years now. You're different from the other girls who work here. You listen to people. Really listen. When Tommy was going through his divorce, you were the only one who knew exactly what to say to him. When Maria's daughter was having trouble in school, you helped her figure out what to do. Sarah paused, coffee pot in hand. It was true. People talked to her, told her things they didn't tell anyone else. She'd always been good at seeing what people needed, at finding the right words when everything felt broken. You've got something special, Mrs. Patterson continued. Don't let this place make you forget that. The words hit harder than they should have. Sarah excused herself and walked quickly to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. In the cracked mirror, she saw a stranger. Dark circles under green eyes that used to sparkle, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. When had she stopped recognizing herself? She splashed cold water on her face and tried to remember the last time she'd felt hopeful about anything. College brochures still sat in her bedroom drawer, buried under bills and medical appointment reminders. She'd been accepted to 3 schools before her father left, before everything fell apart. The memory hit her like a physical blow. That night, the night that changed everything. Her father packing his suitcase while her mother lay in the living room bed they'd set up in the living room. The sound of the front door closing, the silence that followed. Can't do this anymore, he'd said. I'm not strong enough for this. And then he was gone, with their savings, with their hope, with any chance Sarah had of being anything other than what she was right now. A knock on the bathroom door snapped her back to reality. Sarah, you okay in there? It was Jenny, the other waitress. Coming, Sarah called back, wiping her eyes quickly. She returned to the dining room, moving through her routine like a robot. Take orders, serve food, smile when people were rude, pretend everything was fine. But Mrs. Patterson's words kept echoing in her head. You've got something special. Did she? Or was that just something people said to make themselves feel better about watching someone waste away? The lunch rush came and went. Marcus disappeared without paying for his coffee, promising to catch her later. The businessman left a $1 tip on a $20 bill. The afternoon stretched endlessly ahead. At 3 o'clock, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Doctor wants to see us tomorrow. Nothing urgent. Love you. Nothing urgent. That's what her mother always said, even when the cancer came back the first time, even when the treatment stopped working, even when they had to refinance the house to pay for experimental drugs that didn't work anyway. Sarah's hands started shaking again. She excused herself to the storage room and sat down on a box of napkins, trying to breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting strange shadows that made everything look distorted. This couldn't be her life forever. It couldn't be. But what choice did she have? Danny needed to finish school, her mother needed care, and Sarah needed to be strong enough to carry it all, even when she felt like she was drowning. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through social media. Pictures of her high school classmates graduating college, getting engaged, starting careers, living the lives she was supposed to be living, the lives her father's abandonment had stolen from her. A notification popped up, a friend request from someone she didn't recognize, Elena Rodriguez. The profile picture showed a professional-looking woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Sarah almost declined it, but something made her pause. The woman looked familiar somehow. She accepted the request and went back to work, but the feeling of familiarity nagged at her. Where had she seen that face before? The rest of her shift passed in a blur of coffee refills and forced smiles. At closing time, she helped Jenny clean up, her mind elsewhere. Tomorrow's doctor appointment, Marcus's empty promises, the bills piling up at home, the dreams gathering dust in her drawer. As she walked to her car, a 15-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door and a prayer holding the engine together, Sarah felt the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. 22 years old, and already she felt ancient. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment before starting the engine, looking back at the diner through the windshield. The neon sign flickered. Miller's Diner. Good food, good people. Good people? Was she good people? Or was she just stuck people? The drive home took her through the nicer part of town, past houses with perfect lawns and cars that didn't make concerning noises when you turned the key. She used to imagine living in one of those houses someday. Used to believe that hard work and good intentions were enough to change your circumstances. Now she knew better. Now she knew that sometimes, no matter how hard you worked or how much you sacrificed, the world just kept taking pieces of you until there was nothing left but the shell of who you used to be. But as she pulled into her driveway, past the overgrown grass and the mailbox that leaned slightly to the left, Sarah made herself a promise. Tomorrow, after the doctor appointment, she would open that drawer. She would look at those college brochures one more time, not because she believed anything would change, but because Mrs. Patterson was right about one thing. She used to have something special, and maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to find it again. She thought she had learned to carry the weight her father abandoned, but the call that came that Tuesday morning would prove that some burdens are too heavy for anyone to bear alone. The phone rang at 5:47 in the morning, cutting through Sarah's restless sleep like a knife. She knew before she answered it. You always know when the call is going to change everything. Sarah? Danny's voice was shaking. You need to get to the hospital now. Mom, she collapsed in the bathroom. The ambulance is already here. The world tilted sideways. Sarah was moving before her brain caught up, throwing on yesterday's clothes, grabbing her keys with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The Honda started on the third try, and she drove through empty streets with her heart hammering against her ribs.
St. Mary's Hospital. Emergency room. The smell of disinfectant and fear. Danny was in the waiting room, still in his pajamas, looking younger than his 19 years. What happened? Sarah asked, pulling him into a hug. I heard a noise around 5. Found her on the bathroom floor. She was conscious, but Sarah, she couldn't move her left side at all. Stroke. The word hung in the air between them, unspoken but understood. Sarah had seen enough medical dramas to know what that meant, what it could mean. Dr. Martinez appeared 2 hours later, his face carefully neutral in the way doctors learn to master. Miss Williams, I need to speak with you about your mother's condition. They sat in a small room with beige walls and motivational posters that felt like mockery. Your mother has suffered a significant stroke, Dr. Martinez explained. The good news is we caught it early. The challenging news is that she's going to need immediate surgery to remove the clot, followed by extensive rehabilitation. How much? Sarah asked, because that was always the first question in their family. Not, will she be okay? Not, what are her chances? How much will it cost to keep her alive? The surgery alone is $50,000. That's not including the hospital stay, rehabilitation, or ongoing care she'll need. Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle, but the numbers hit like physical blows. Sarah felt the room spinning. $50,000. They maybe had $3,000 in savings, money she'd been putting aside for Danny's textbooks next semester. Their insurance would cover some of it, but not nearly enough. Never enough. I need to make some calls, she said, standing on unsteady legs. Outside in the hallway, Sarah leaned against the wall and tried to think. Who could she call? Who had that kind of money? The answer was nobody. Absolutely nobody. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Hey babe, can you spot me $40? I'll pay you back Friday, promise. She stared at the message until the words blurred. $40, while her mother was fighting for her life and they needed $50,000, Marcus was asking for $40 he would never pay back. Excuse me, are you Sarah Williams? Sarah looked up to see a woman approaching. Mid-40s, professional but warm, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She looked familiar, and then Sarah remembered the friend request from yesterday. Elena Rodriguez. I'm Elena, the woman said. I saw your mother being brought in. I'm here visiting my father. He's been in the cardiac unit for 3 weeks now. I couldn't help but notice, you look like someone who's carrying the weight of the world. There was something about Elena's voice, something that made Sarah's carefully constructed walls crack just a little. My mother needs surgery. $50,000. I don't know what to do. Elena nodded slowly. I've been where you are. Different circumstances, but the same feeling of drowning while everyone expects you to keep swimming. She paused, studying Sarah's face. Can I buy you a coffee? Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who understands. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, surrounded by the quiet desperation that lived in places like this. Elena listened while Sarah talked, really listened, the way Mrs. Patterson had said Sarah listened to others. I lost my daughter 2 years ago. Car accident. She was 23, just graduated from college, had her whole life ahead of her. Her name was Sophia. Sarah's breath caught. I'm so sorry. Sophia was a lot like you. She had this way of seeing people, really seeing them. She wanted to help everyone, fix everything. She would have loved you. Elena's voice was steady, but her eyes held an ocean of grief. After she died, I threw myself into work, built a successful consulting business, made more money than I knew what to do with. But none of it meant anything because the person I most wanted to share it with was gone. Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver ring with a small emerald stone. This was Sophia's. She wore it every day. She held it out to Sarah. I want you to have it. I can't take that, Sarah whispered. Yes, you can, because I see something in you that reminds me of her, that spark that refuses to be extinguished no matter how dark things get. Elena's voice was firm now. But I'm not just giving you a ring, Sarah. I'm offering you a chance. What kind of chance? I'll help with your mother's medical bills, all of them, but in return, I need something from you. Elena leaned forward. I need you to prove to me and to yourself that you're ready to fight for something bigger than just survival, that you're ready to build a life, not just endure one. Sarah's hands were shaking as she looked at the ring. It was beautiful, delicate, but somehow strong, like its previous owner, I imagined. What would I have to do? Work for me, learn from me, let me teach you skills that can change your life. But I won't lie to you, it won't be easy. It will mean 18-hour days, learning things that feel impossible, failing more times than you succeed. Most people aren't willing to pay that price. Sarah thought about her father, walking away when things got hard, about Marcus, always taking but never giving, about everyone who had ever made her feel small and invisible and worthless. Why me? She asked. Elena smiled, and for a moment Sarah could see the ghost of her daughter in her eyes. Because yesterday you accepted my friend request even though you didn't know me. Because you're sitting here asking how to save your mother instead of asking why this happened to you. Because when I look at you, I see someone who's been knocked down so many times, she forgot she knows how to fight back. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Strength isn't about not being afraid, Sarah. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. Elena reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. Sophia used to say that the best people are forged in the hottest fires. You've been in the fire your whole life. Now it's time to see what you're made of. For the first time in years, someone believed Sarah was worth saving. But you can sense the weight of this choice pressing down on her. If you're rooting for this comeback, and you believe every woman deserves a second chance, hit that like right now and send strength her way. Sarah slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Okay, let's do this. Elena smiled, and Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in so long she'd almost forgotten what it was called. Hope. Fragile and terrifying, but real. Standing in that hospital corridor, with her mother fighting for life, and a stranger offering hope she dared not believe in, Sarah faced the hardest truth of all. Sometimes angels come disguised as broken people who understand your pain. 3 weeks later, Sarah's new reality was a blur of hospital visits, online tutorials, and coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Elena hadn't been lying about the 18-hour days. Sarah's office was a corner of her mother's hospital room, where she balanced a laptop on her knees and learned about things like conversion rates and email marketing, while machines beeped steadily in the background. Her mother was recovering, slowly but surely. The surgery had been successful, and the insurance had covered more than expected thanks to Elena's connections with a patient advocate. But the real work was just beginning. Tell me about your target audience, Elena said, settling into the uncomfortable visitor's chair with 2 cups of decent coffee from the shop across the street. It was their daily routine now. Elena would arrive at 7 a.m. sharp, and they would work until visiting hours ended. Women who are drowning, Sarah said without hesitation. Women who are trying to hold everything together while falling apart inside. Women who feel invisible. Good, but be more specific. Age, income level, life circumstances. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking. 25 to 45, single mothers or daughters taking care of aging parents, working multiple jobs but still can't get ahead. They've been abandoned or betrayed by someone they trusted. They feel like they're failing at everything, but they keep trying because people depend on them. Elena nodded approvingly. You're describing yourself 6 months ago. I'm describing myself now, Sarah corrected. The only difference is that now I have help. It was true. Despite the long hours and steep learning curve, Sarah felt more like herself than she had in years. Elena was a demanding teacher, but a fair one. She explained not just what to do, but why it worked, how to think strategically, how to see patterns and opportunities that others missed. The work was hard, but it made sense to Sarah in a way that serving coffee and taking orders never had. She was good at understanding what people needed, at finding the right words to make them feel seen and heard. Elena was teaching her how to turn that natural ability into something bigger. Your first assignment, Elena said, pulling out a folder, is to create a lead magnet, something valuable that you can give away for free in exchange for email addresses. What would have helped you most when you were at your lowest point? Sarah thought about those dark nights when she'd felt completely alone, when the weight of everyone else's needs had threatened to crush her. A guide, something that would have told me I wasn't crazy for feeling overwhelmed, that would have given me practical steps for dealing with crisis without falling apart completely. Perfect. Write that guide. 5,000 words. You have 1 week. Sarah's stomach dropped. 5,000 words? I've never written anything longer than a grocery list. Then you'll learn. Sophia used to say that the only way to discover what you're capable of is to attempt something you're sure you can't do. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and a blank document staring back at her. Danny was at his part-time job, the house was quiet, and she had no excuses left. She started typing. If you're reading this, you're probably drowning. The words came slowly at first, then faster as she found her rhythm. She wrote about the guilt of wanting more when others had less, about the exhaustion of being everyone's rock when you felt like sand, about the shame of needing help when you'd been taught that asking for help was weakness. She wrote until 3 a.m, her fingers cramping and her eyes burning. When she finally stopped, she had written 3,000 words without realizing it. The next morning, her phone rang while she was getting ready for another day at the hospital. Marcus. Hey, babe. His voice was different somehow, smoother. I heard about your mom. I'm really sorry I wasn't around when it happened. I was dealing with some stuff, you know? What do you want, Marcus? I want to make things right between us. I miss you. I miss us. There was a pause. I also heard you're working with some rich lady now. That's amazing, Sarah. You always were the smartest person I knew. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. How did you hear about that? People talk, you know, small town. Listen, I was thinking maybe we could grab dinner tonight, catch up. I've got some ideas about how I could help with your new business thing. The old Sarah would have said yes. The old Sarah would have been grateful that he was paying attention to her again, would have ignored the red flags and focused on the possibility that maybe this time would be different. But the ring on her finger caught the light, and she remembered Elena's words about strength being about doing what needed to be done, even when you were terrified. No, Marcus, we're done. Come on, don't be like that. I know I messed up before, but I've changed. I'm clean now. I've got a job lined up. Things are different. Clean. The word hit her like a slap. You were using? It wasn't a big deal. Just some pills to help me deal with stress. But I'm past all that now. I want to focus on us, on our future. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering all the times he'd disappeared, all the money that had gone missing, all the promises that had turned to dust. There is no us, Marcus. There never really was. Don't say that. You need me, Sarah. You've always needed me. Who else is going to put up with all your baggage, your crazy family, your money problems, your... Sarah hung up. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear this time, from anger. Pure, clean anger at every person who had ever made her feel small,
Who had ever convinced her she should be grateful for scraps when she deserved a feast? She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The dark circles were still there, but something else was different. Her eyes looked alive, alert, like someone who was finally waking up after a long, terrible dream. At the hospital, Elena took one look at her and smiled. "Good morning. You look like someone who just made an important decision. Marcus called, wanted to get back together now that he heard I was working with you. And I told him no. For the first time in my life, I told him no and meant it." Elena's smile widened. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying and amazing, and like I might throw up." "That sounds about right. Growth is uncomfortable. If it was easy, everyone would do it." They worked in companionable silence for a while, Sarah polishing her guide while Elena handled client calls. Around noon, Sarah's mother woke up from her nap, more alert than she'd been since the stroke. "Sarah, honey, come here." Sarah moved to the bedside, taking her mother's hand. The left side of her face still drooped slightly, and her speech was slower than before, but her eyes were clear. "I need to tell you something about your father, about why he really left." Sarah's stomach clenched. "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I should have told you years ago." Her grip tightened. "He didn't just leave because he couldn't handle my illness. He left because he was stealing from his company, embezzling. He was about to be arrested, so he took our savings and ran." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" "I found out after he left. The police came looking for him. I never told you because I didn't want you to hate him, but I see now that protecting you from the truth just made you blame yourself for his abandonment." Sarah felt like she was falling through space. Everything she believed about her father, about herself, about why their family had fallen apart was wrong. "You are not responsible for other people's choices, Sarah. You never were. Your father left because he was a coward and a criminal, not because you weren't good enough to make him stay." Elena had been quietly listening from her chair. Now she stood and moved to Sarah's other side. "I need to tell you something too," Elena said softly, "about Sophia, about how she died." Sarah looked up, seeing tears in Elena's eyes for the first time. "Elena." She was coming home from a job interview, her dream job at a nonprofit that helped women in crisis. She was so excited, called me from the car to tell me she got it. Elena's voice broke slightly. "A drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly." "Elena." I blamed myself for months. If I hadn't pushed her to be independent, if I'd insisted she live at home longer, if I'd driven her to the interview myself. But grief counseling taught me something important. We can't control other people's choices. We can only control our response to them. Sarah looked between the two women who had become her anchors, understanding something fundamental about the nature of loss and healing and the strange ways that broken people find each other. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Good," Elena said. "Fear means you're paying attention. Fear means you understand that what we're building here matters." That afternoon, Sarah finished her guide, 5,047 words about surviving crisis, finding strength in unexpected places, and learning to ask for help without shame. She read it 3 times, making small edits before finally hitting save. "It's done," Sarah told Elena. "How do you feel?" "Like I just climbed a mountain I didn't know I could climb." "That's exactly right, and this is just the first mountain." As visiting hours ended and they packed up their laptops, Sarah felt something shifting inside her chest. The scared, small part of her that had been running the show for so long was still there, but it was no longer in charge. In that moment, sitting in a hospital room with nothing left to lose, rock bottom wasn't her end. It was the solid foundation she needed to build something that no one could ever take away.
6 months later, Sarah's apartment looked like a hurricane had hit it. Papers covered every surface, 3 laptops hummed on the kitchen table, and empty coffee cups formed small cities in the corners. She'd moved out of her child. Tomorrow, she would stand on that stage and tell her story. She would be terrified and exhilarated and probably forget half of what she'd planned to say. But she would do it anyway, because that's what courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. She had lost everything she thought mattered, but in the process, she had found something her father never gave her and Marcus never could: the unshakable belief that she could create her own destiny. The auditorium in Chicago held 800 women, and every seat was filled. Sarah stood in the wings, her heart hammering against her ribs as she listened to her introduction. Please welcome Sarah Williams, founder of the Resilient Women Network and author of the upcoming book, Drowning in Plain Sight. A book? She still couldn't believe that was real. A publisher had reached out after seeing her speak at a smaller event, and now she had a book deal. Her story, her strategies, her hard-won wisdom would be available in bookstores across the country. You ready? The event coordinator asked. Sarah touched the ring on her finger, the one that had become her talisman. Ready. She walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, looking out at hundreds of faces that reflected her own journey back at her. Women who had been knocked down and were learning to get back up. Women who had been told they were too much or not enough, who were discovering their own strength. 2 years ago, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, I was drowning in plain sight, working multiple jobs, caring for a sick mother, trying to hold together a family that my father had abandoned. I felt invisible, worthless, like I was just taking up space in a world that didn't have room for someone like me. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I thought that was my story. The girl who got left behind, who wasn't strong enough or smart enough or valuable enough to deserve better. But I was wrong about something crucial. I was confusing my circumstances with my identity. She told them about the night her father left, about Marcus and his empty promises, about the morning her mother had the stroke and everything fell apart. She told them about Elena, about the ring, about learning that sometimes the people who save us are the ones who understand our pain because they've lived it too. The woman standing before you today runs a business that generates 6 figures annually. She has helped over 5,000 women rebuild their lives after crisis. She has a book coming out, speaks at conferences, and has been featured in major publications. The applause was building, but Sarah held up her hand. But that's not the real transformation. The real transformation is that I finally understand my worth isn't determined by what happens to me. It's determined by how I choose to respond to what happens to me. After her speech, women lined up to talk to her. They shared their stories, asked for advice, thanked her for making them feel less alone. Each conversation reminded Sarah why she did this work, why it mattered. One woman, probably in her 50s with silver hair and tired eyes, waited until the end of the line. I just wanted to say thank you, she said simply. My daughter died by suicide 3 years ago. She was struggling with depression and felt like she had nowhere to turn. I wish she could have heard your message, but maybe I can carry it forward for her. Sarah hugged her tightly, both of them crying. This was why she did this work, not for the money or the recognition, but for moments like this, for the possibility that her pain could prevent someone else's. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a very different place, the parking lot of Miller's Diner. She'd driven down from her new apartment in Columbus, a 2-bedroom place with actual furniture and a view of the river. She could afford much more now, but she was learning the difference between what she could afford and what she actually needed. The diner looked smaller than she remembered. The neon sign still flickered and the parking lot still had the same potholes. But something was different. There was a for sale sign in the window. She pushed through the door, the bell chiming the same way it had thousands of times before. Jenny was behind the counter, looking older and more tired than Sarah remembered. "Sarah?" Jenny's face lit up with genuine surprise. "Oh my God, look at you! You look amazing!" It was true. Sarah had learned to take care of herself in ways she never had before. She ate regular meals, got enough sleep, wore clothes that fit properly and made her feel confident. But more than that, she carried herself differently, like someone who knew her own worth. "I heard about the diner. Mr. Miller is selling?" Jenny nodded sadly. "His health isn't good and business has been slow. He's asking $200,000, but honestly, I don't think anyone's going to buy it. This part of town isn't exactly booming." Sarah looked around the dining room where she'd spent so many years feeling trapped and invisible. The booth where Marcus used to sit and ask for free food, the table where the businessman had never bothered to learn her name, the corner where she'd cried after particularly difficult shifts. What if someone did buy it? What would you want them to do with it? Jenny laughed, but not unkindly. "In my dreams, turn it into something that actually helps people, a place where women could come to learn new skills, maybe get some support. But that's just fantasy." Sarah smiled. "Sometimes fantasies become realities if the right person believes in them." 3 weeks later, Sarah signed the papers to purchase Miller's Diner. She was going to transform it into the Resilient Women's Center, a place that offered job training, financial literacy classes, counseling services, and community support. The diner would stay open, but it would be staffed by women in the program, giving them work experience and confidence. Elena insisted on being a partner in the venture. "Sophia would have loved this," she said, signing her own check. "A place where women can come to rebuild their lives, to discover their strength. It's perfect." The renovation took 4 months. Sarah kept the vintage charm but updated everything else. New equipment, fresh paint, comfortable seating areas for classes and support groups. She hired Jenny as the general manager and brought in counselors, job coaches, and financial advisors. The grand reopening was on a Saturday in October, exactly 3 years after the night her father had left. Sarah stood behind the counter where she'd once felt so small, looking out at a room of women who were ready to rewrite their stories. Her mother was there, fully recovered and beaming with pride. Danny, now in his senior year of college on a full scholarship, worked the crowd with easy confidence. Elena sat at the counter wearing a pin with Sophia's picture that she'd had made for the occasion. "Ladies," Sarah tapped a spoon against a coffee cup to get everyone's attention. "Welcome to the Resilient Women's Center. This place used to represent everything I thought I couldn't escape from. Today, it represents everything we can become when we refuse to let our circumstances define our destiny." The applause was warm and genuine. Sarah looked around the room at faces that reflected her own journey back at her. Women who had been knocked down but were learning to get back up. Women who had been told they were too much or not enough, who were discovering their own strength. 2 years ago, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, I was drowning in plain sight, working multiple jobs, caring for a sick mother, trying to hold together a family that my father had abandoned. I felt invisible, worthless, like I was just taking up space in a world that didn't have room for someone like me. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I thought that was my story. The girl who got left behind, who wasn't strong enough or smart enough or valuable enough to deserve better. But I was wrong about something crucial. I was confusing my circumstances with my identity. She told them about the night her father left, about Marcus and his empty promises, about the morning her mother had the stroke and everything fell apart. She told them about Elena, about the ring, about learning that sometimes the people who save us are the ones who understand our pain because they've lived it too. The woman standing before you today runs a business that generates 6 figures annually. She has helped over 5,000 women rebuild their lives after crisis. She has a book coming out, speaks at conferences, and has been featured in major publications. The applause was building, but Sarah held up her hand. But that's not the real transformation. The real transformation is that I finally understand my worth isn't determined by what happens to me. It's determined by how I choose to respond to what happens to me. After her speech, women lined up to talk to her. They shared their stories, asked for advice, thanked her for making them feel less alone. Each conversation reminded Sarah why she did this work, why it mattered. One woman, probably in her 50s with silver hair and tired eyes, waited until the end of the line. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said simply. "My daughter died by suicide 3 years ago. She was struggling with depression and felt like she had nowhere to turn. I wish she could have heard your message, but maybe I can carry it forward for her." Sarah hugged her tightly, both of them crying. This was why she did this work, not for the money or the recognition, but for moments like this, for the possibility that her pain could prevent someone else's. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a very different place, the parking lot of Miller's Diner. She'd driven down from her new apartment in Columbus, a 2-bedroom place with actual furniture and a view of the river. She could afford much more now, but she was learning the difference between what she could afford and what she actually needed. The diner looked smaller than she remembered. The neon sign still flickered and the parking lot still had the same potholes. But something was different. There was a for sale sign in the window. She pushed